Welcome back to another episode of the Inside Line podcast. My name is Kristin Carpenter, and I am a co-host with Nick Sargent, the president of SIA. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Welcome. Good to have you. Great to have Ammi here.
And we have another person today, our very first guest. Nick, why don't you do the honors?
Let me introduce Ammi Borenstein. Ammi is the CEO of Snaplinc Consulting. He is a partner with SIA, and we spend a lot of time talking about the issues that are affecting our business today, compliance, regulations, et cetera. And Ammi has been a great partner, but more importantly, he is our in-house, out-house expert. And so we rely on Ammi's expertise to really help us understand what's affecting the business today and putting it in layman's terms so then we can push it back out to our members. So Ammi is not only a good friend, but a really strong colleague. And I was quickly reminded the last time the three of us were together was in December in Munich. And I think we were huddling around a plate of Kaiserschmarrn. We were talking about these compliances and regulations, this was 9 months ago. So this is not a new conversation for us.
Absolutely not. I will say, sorry to interrupt, but I just have to point out, you called him an in-house and out-house expert.
I heard that too.
When did you get your latest degree in out-house management?
Yeah, thankfully never.
I have to give Ammi the opportunity because I know so many people in the SIA's membership value his background. He has really come up through the ranks and had to spend a lot of time, honing his craft in factories all over the world. And Ammi, if you can just talk about like your first job in the industry and then the arc of your career, and then we'll just sort of jump into everything here today.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked. Actually, I do like to point out I started out as a shop floor kid here in Seattle. That was, hate to admit it, but over 30 years ago. But jobs deep within the industry, I've spent most of my time between K2 when it was out on Vashon Island. Used to take a ferry to work every single day. And then spent a dozen years as director of product at Outdoor Research, also here downtown Seattle, no ferry required. And that's really where developed the insights, the exposure, the expertise, all those factories that you mentioned, factory visits over the length of the career. And then really saw that there was an incredible opportunity to step out of industry when people were the number one conversation about 10 years ago was around how the industry was going to comply with what appeared to be a new wave of demand around regulations, around sustainability, and left industry to form Snaplinc Consulting.
Which we're really, really grateful is in existence. Seriously, you're an excellent resource. In the show notes, we'll have links to all of the great resources that Ammi and his team puts out, as well as the great resources that SIA puts out daily for its membership. So I think that, having a guest like you here today, we would be remiss not to dive right in. You do such a great job of kind of helping us keep our eye on the ball. So if it's okay with you, Nick, I think it would be great to just talk about September 2025. Like, where are we on this journey of product and messaging compliance?
First thing I should do before I answer is right back at both of you. No person is an island, and the collaboration. Kristin, we've worked together on so many projects over so many years. So, appreciate that as well. And Nick, you and team were the ones who really gave me the opportunity to embed more deeply within SIA and snow sports. And, I appreciate both of you so very, very much for that.
I'd give you a hug if I could.
Okay. And what was the question again?
So, it's sort of because here we are having this lovely conversation. These are topics that people are having a super hard time with, no matter how many resources we offer at SIA. Everybody, I think, feels a little behind the eight ball when it comes to product compliance and also just the company working together, their brands, their retail entities toward a new goal while we're managing a lot of other flaming hula hoops. So I think that Nick and I were talking. We thought the best way to do this today was for you to help us just keep our eye on the ball with what's happening now and where we need to be really paying attention closely in September of 2025, because it can be pretty overwhelming.
Yes, indeed. So definitely good questions. We started Snaplinc Consulting, and most of the work at the beginning was very voluntary focused, right? That was nearly 10 years ago now. Companies happily were very aspirational in their focus. REI came out with their product sustainability requirements, so that converted some of those aspirational activities into hard actions, which was all really, really great. What has happened, however, in the last 3 years or so is that has flipped almost completely. Now we are tracking a vast regulatory landscape. And so very little of the work that companies are doing around sustainability remains voluntary and all required. And so that probably when we stand here September 2025 and look at the landscape, that is the number one defining feature of what companies have to tackle right now.
Which is, the modern day issue, to think that 10 years ago, you saw this opportunity speaks volumes to where we are today. And I find it fascinating. Anecdotally, I speak to our members every day, and we have members that, are just learning about EPR, for example. Like I had a call up the other day. I've never even heard of this. So like, how are we addressing this with our members, and how are we making this more consumable?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the universal question for this sector and for almost every sector right now. Just as that's a great example, EPR. So let me zoom out just for a second, and then I'll get right back to EPR, which is again maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, we were tracking probably about a dozen regulations that affected our industry. And a dozen is great. A dozen is a spreadsheet. A dozen is a few conversations with clients and building a couple of programs to get in compliance. Today, we have a database that tracks 135 regulations. And all of those have come into play truly within the last 3 to 5 years. A big component of that, getting right back to EPR, is exactly that EPR activity. We track EPR right now across 43 global jurisdictions. And it's something that, was nascent in Europe, didn't exist in the United States or Canada. And now it's up to 43 places that brands have to track this information and manage it. So it's a vastly different landscape than just a very, very short time ago. And as far as how to tackle it, the hard part is, and I talk to friends, other consultants, people in other industries. And for example, food service. I have some friends in the food service industry. They've been tackling these issues for 30, 40, 50, maybe more years. So it is just embedded in everything they do. I think for us as an industry, it is anything but. And we are going to have to quickly figure out how to pivot from this being a dozen line items you could track on a spreadsheet to 135 regulations that are vast. Some of them are small. Many of them are vast in scope. We are going to have to learn how to embed this deeply in the way we do business.
And ideally turn it into a competitive advantage. I think, by nature, our users, our participants love the outdoors and want to be stewards for the environment. And I feel like, you went back to talking about REI and how they kind of, I think, really opened the door to this and kind of probably set the stage. I feel like when retail starts to screen again, or even virtue signal, I might add, again, that's when it's going to go really fast in terms of transparency needs for consumers. So I think that this is a fantastic topic for us to talk about. We're going to revisit it a lot on this show because there's so much for us to do. But ultimately, like the people on this show have lived through a very set schedule in terms of getting product from concept to commercialization to market. And that has kind of been this really, something we can rely on. We've built our businesses around it. And all of these, regulatory initiatives are hitting that and just kind of, I think, disrupting it. And I think that's one of the most challenging facets of all of this. So, Nick, what do you think? Should we maybe look at like an example of a company that's going through this? What do you think the best way to make the great information that Ammi provides to our membership more actionable in the podcast today?
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing from hundreds of our members. Some of our members are staffed up and they're way out in front of this. They're not waiting for anyone to tell them what to do. And then, my last example of, we have other members who is first they're hearing of this EPR, as one example, is, through a phone call from myself to them. But we have other issues with PFAS. We have other issues with circularity and LCA, life cycle assessment. So, this is really where the conversation has started with Ammi and SIA and the membership of like, where do we start? How do we tackle this? Mm-hmm. How do we put this in consumable, bite-sized nuggets that people can really get to understand what's in play in front of you. And so, we have a number of different information pieces within snowsports.org in the member portal. We have a checklist. We have a working spreadsheet of the dates, the categories, the states. Ammi and I talk about this almost daily. It sounds and feels like, a lot of the regulations are coming out of Europe and being adopted here in the US and North America. The big difference is in the EU, it's EU collective. And here in the US, it's state by state. So we have different nuances around these compliances. And this is really where, Ammi, turns into, the MVP of the industry of how do we manage this? And Ammi, maybe you want to jump into how you're helping us.
Yeah. I mean, I think, just settling back on that EPR example. And for those who don't know, EPR is the concept of brands and companies having management of their packaging at end of life. The reason it is emerging so dramatically globally is we all now have gotten very accustomed to e-commerce. We order 3 different items that are teeny tiny. They come in 3 different packages, and municipal waste systems are absolutely overwhelmed with packaging waste. China stopped taking that waste in 2017, 18, around there. And since then, municipal waste systems just don't have the capacity to manage this. So EPR is a concept where now brands are responsible for several things. One, paying for waste at the end of life of packaging, and therefore are incentivized to change to materials that are more recyclable and reduce their material footprint. So when you put it in that context, you can understand why 43 jurisdictions, and to clarify, that's about half in Europe, half European countries, about a quarter US states, and about a quarter Canadian provinces. Those are the regions where e-commerce has just exploded, and retail in general has exploded. And so what we're really seeing is, to Nick's point, the challenges around how do you comply jurisdiction by jurisdiction. For example, Oregon requires that you report things like the wrap, plastic wrap on a pallet. Colorado does not. How do you build systems? How do you build capability within organizations to not only be able to report that, but even just to capture and understand that? It's a very, very complex problem right now, and only accelerating in the moment.
So what do you say, Ammi, to say a company calls you and, hey, we saw you on a podcast, we saw you on an SIA webinar, we want to learn more. Where do we start? Like, what's your canned response? I'd love to hear that. I've never had called you and asked that question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, the truth is we can't totally can the response because it's different for every brand, sure, based on their footprint of product, footprint of packaging, and more than anything, footprint of distribution. So honestly, the first thing we do is determine that distribution footprint, determine what the packaging is made out of. We do actually quite a bit of work in the beauty sector. Beauty is very challenged right now because oftentimes they lead with packaging. Oftentimes the packaging weight and volume is greater than the product weight and volume. And oftentimes it's plastic, which in Oregon right now, the fees for plastic are 6 times higher than for paper. So we really have to pick apart and understand what the specific company challenges are. And then, we have to build a plan state by state, product by product, and start to capture all that data so it's ready for reporting. Not an easy problem to solve. None of this, unfortunately, right now, none of these are terribly easy problems to solve. On the other side, I should say, someone who I'm sure will eventually listen to this podcast, but shall not be named, wrote me a slightly frustrated email. This is somebody that works in a snow sport brand. And they said, I just spent 3 weeks determining that I owe the state of Oregon $495. I would gladly pay of my own money $1,000 to never have to do that again. So for that person, the next few states are going to be pretty simple, pretty straightforward. For scaled brands operating globally, this is an extraordinarily complex problem, but we build them, tools and capability to manage it and address it. Just again, product by product, region by region.
Is this something that is going to create? We're obviously talking a lot about just a challenging global landscape economically and in many other ways. When you're speaking with brands and retailers, are they also talking about just margin and revenue and how this is eating into that? Because as you said, 3 years ago, we started to see regulatory compliance sneak in, and it's grown ever since. And my guess is it hasn't been, we're increasing prices and increasing revenue to manage that. I'd love to hear from both of you on that. Like that, this is such a challenging time to have this hit and everything else.
Yeah, I would just add to that, the key point is the challenging times. And that's what we're experiencing. The brands that are engaged in this space, there's clearly an expense. And they've acknowledged the expense, they've planned for it, they've budgeted for it, and they're moving forward. But, these are unprecedented times. We've got compliance, and it's not just one thing. Ammi was saying there's, they're tracking 143 plus or minus compliance. A lot of people that we speak to, and we were having this conversation 9 months ago in Munich, we were just talking PFAS. Remember the day, it feels like it was forever ago, but we're still talking about PFAS. We had a webinar about this a few days ago. And then you layer on, compliance, and you layer on tariff, these are big expenses, and these are unplanned expenses. So the brands are really having to look at pricing models, overall expense, budgeting, and in some cases, they're sitting on material that they purchased 3, 4, 5 years ago that now they can't use. So now there's depreciating asset with no home, and they're having to replace that with more sustainable packing materials. And, I was saying this, recently, this industry hasn't seen change like this in 40 or 50 years to my 35 I've been working in this business. But, here we are today, and those that invest and make those changes survive. Those that are questioning, feeling the sides out, it's going to be challenging. And so we really want to reduce the challenge, and we want to increase the help. And that's really, where Ammi plays from, and Snaplinc. They are amazing and very patient, very sensitive, because we have to be sensitive because this is the business that we love so much. So anyway, Ammi, I don't know where you want to start and stop there, but that's,
Yeah, I think where you started is exactly right. The notion of these are very challenging times for businesses. I think what we can't take for granted is the overwhelming impact that tariffs have had, as you mentioned, Nick. And then, yes, layer all this on top, and it is just everybody's heads are spinning right now. And so it's a really, really difficult moment. Nonetheless, these regulations are moving forward. And they're much less expensive to manage and to deal with proactively than reactively. As an example, we see fines in California. Their EPR program is not up yet, but as an example, the fines could be up to $50,000 per day. In Oregon, the program is up yet. It is up now, and it is $25,000 per day. So 3 or 4 days worth of penalties in Oregon would pay for a really robust program to manage all of these requirements. And so that's where we try to encourage people to think about it. And people, the number one question we get, maybe not number one, but one of the big questions we get is, well, will they really come after me? Is enforcement happening? We can safely say the answer is yes. We know that Canada is enforcing a number of their EPR programs. And I know we're dug in deep on EPR, but it's just kind of a good example du jour because it's happening right now. Canada is digging in on enforcement. We just learned this week that Colorado is digging in on EPR enforcement, and their deadline was just 3 weeks ago. So these things are happening very, very quickly. If you missed that Colorado deadline 3 weeks ago, you could be exposed to the Colorado fines, which I don't have in front of me, but I think are about $5,000 per day. And
that's correct.
Yeah. So again, you add up $5,000 a day, you could quickly pay for a really beautiful regulatory compliance initiative within your company, and therefore that's what we recommend.
We're hearing this time and time again, whether it's the Lacey Act, whether it's, reporting the wood that's in your product, EPR. And again, we're kind of picking on EPR today because it's an easy example for the moment. But, and we do hear this frequently, from our members. How are they going to find me? How do they know what products we have? And it's like asking the tax guy, how are you going to be found? They find you. And the number of phone calls that come to me personally here at my desk, I can't believe these guys are coming after me. Why are they coming after our industry? And I say this with all due respect. They're not coming after you and you're in this industry. They're coming after everybody.
Yes.
And it's not a doomsday prep, but this is reality. And so, when you drive to work and you get your speeding ticket, it's not poor me. It's like, you got what you deserve. I hate to be that guy, but, and you pay the fine. So, that's where you are. And Ammi, your advice is spot on. The sooner you invest, the sooner you get ahead of this and you are proactive than reactive. The famous sports saying, I'd rather play for my toes than my heels, especially if I want to win.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that we think is actually quite interesting is that the legislators have gotten a little bit more creative about enforcement as well. So, for example, Oregon has actually released a list of all the companies that registered to comply with their EPR program. They expected, I don't think they knew exactly what to expect, but they expected somewhere between 10 and 12,000 registrants, and they got about 2,000.
Oh.
So they have this list published. Happy to say that many, many snow sports brands are on that list. But what they also have done is created a provision for people to report those who they think should have been on the list and are not.
Ooh, this is fascinating.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's like a blotter for Oregon.
Yeah, and we're seeing it in PFAS, right? California wrote in the certificate of compliance law, which allowed retailers to be exempt if they got these certificates from brands. So essentially, you put retailers in as a front line of enforcement. Retailer cancels an order, a brand sits up straight. And so enforcement people ask, are they gonna come, bang down my front door and take me away? It may not be that involved. It may be as simple as one of your big customers asks you for documentation, you don't have it, and you lose that sale.
So tell me about Ammi. Tell me about CAA. Tell me. Why that this is so important to our members.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So Circular Action Alliance, CAA, is the producer responsibility organization in the United States. So these EPR programs are required to have a centralized repository for reporting that is created by the fees that are generated as a result of this tax on packaging. And it feels challenging. However, in the United States, jump out of your chair and do a happy dance. Because in Europe right now, there are about 15 or 20 individual PROs. So far in the United States, we only have one, and it's Circular Action Alliance. So even though these regulations are cumbersome, challenging, and growing, we at least have one benefit in that we're not reporting in 15 or 20 different places. We're actually reporting so far in just one place, which is great. And we talk about EPR heavily around packaging, but California has passed the law for EPR around textiles. And so Circular Action Alliance set a really successful model. And so industry has now come together and is building a second producer responsibility organization designed to manage when this textile EPR goes into effect in about 3 years.
So we're seeing a lot of news coming out of California.
Oh yeah,
and certainly on all spectrums. But their outdoor organization is really progressive, and they're really pushing the needle hard. I have heard anecdotally, through some of the social channels that CAA is not easy to work with, or CAA this or that. And to your point, we have one PRO. Compared to what Europe has, multiple PROs. So, we should feel lucky, to be very fair, maybe in an unfair situation, but it could be worse. What do you hear? What do you think just about, having one PRO versus multiple PROs?
Yeah. So actually, our experience with CAA has been great. We reach out to them all the time on behalf of clients, and they're extremely responsive. In addition, we would say the state level regulators who partner with CAA on these programs have also been great. Some of them takes a little bit to hear back from, and CAA is pretty bogged down, and it can take a little while to hear back. But they're generally very responsive, receptive, and super helpful.
So I have a quick question also about kind of the whole product development process, because both of you have a background in that. And Ammi, I know that you have a long background in that. Product has been king in these markets. So can you give a little advice in terms of like everybody sitting around the table talking about the product they want to launch in 18 months or whatever it is today, and folding these, whether it's messaging or product compliance into that process?
Yeah, well, it's good. And I would zoom out for a second and say we've been pretty dug in for the last few moments on EPR, which is great because it is the challenge of the moment. But really, when you zoom out and you think about the global regulatory environment, it's important to look at what's happening outside of just EPR. So, for example, we see the ESPR, which we colloquially call ESPR, which is the Eco Design for Sustainable Products Regulations. We get good at acronyms in this business. And ESPR is going to upend how we think about product creation, right? EPR right now is upending how we think of packaging creation. So in some ways, it's actually good training wheels because packaging, does have to be designed and sourced. So it's good practice, good building of the muscles. But when you look at things like ESPR, or when we look back to what we have dealt with PFAS, those are things that fundamentally change product creation and, unfortunately, or sometimes fortunately, product performance, right? So, for example, when we went from PFAS DWRs to PFAS-free DWRs as an industry, performance changed and not for the better. And as an industry, we're really, really struggling with how to get back to that level of performance. And then when we look at the ESPR, the ESPR in Europe, that is a vast framework regulation. And that is going to require that people really think differently about how they put their products together. The requirements around sustainability under ESPR are substantial. So yeah, I mean, it very, very directly takes aim at how product goes to market. And these things are happening fast. The ESPR regulations are unfolding as we speak, and they're going to start affecting product in earliest 27, though that's probably unlikely, but by 28, 29. And from a product development standpoint, 2028 is in 5 minutes, right? I mean, it starts any moment on that product creation cycle.
So we talk about the globalization of this industry. We used to talk regionally, but we've changed that conversation, and it really is global. And so what starts in Europe and ends up in US, or US and ends up in Europe, I mean, these are common industry issues that we need to tackle from both ends of the spectrum. And, we're not in a place to, no longer say, well, this is a US thing or this is a Europe thing. This is a global thing. And so, when we think about global, we think, okay, here's a huge opportunity. And, this is where a lot of the conversation is happening between Snaplinc and SIA of, hence why we were in Munich, as we mentioned earlier, how do we globalize this conversation, and how do we really attack this in a place where we can be proactive? Mm-hmm. And, Ammi, you have a lot of ideas. We have a lot of ideas. What's your top idea that we could share with the team here? That's going to be.
I mean, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think the one idea I've been sort of socializing for, I would say about the last year and a half, that gets horrendous reception because nobody wants to hear it, is that we have historically, I think about my background, 25 plus years, designing, developing, sourcing products. Typically, we would design, develop, source one, and sell everywhere. And the difference might have been the care content labels had to get a little bit longer in Japan or in Europe or in Canada for certain products. But that was about it. And now we are trying to introduce clients to the idea that you may actually have to design per market. Mm-hmm. And that is extraordinarily disruptive. Our business profit margins aren't built around that. Our inventory management systems aren't built around that. But that is common in other sectors, right? You think about the automotive industry. They don't build one car for every market. They segment by market. And this may be where we have to go to some extent, not all the way, but to some extent as an industry. As an example, the EUDR, another acronym, the European Union Deforestation Regulation, the EUDR has very, very strict requirements on wood, but actually has no requirements on skis. Mm-hmm. So what does that even look like? So if you're building skis in Europe, your wood cores are highly regulated. But if you're building that same identical ski anywhere else and then shipping it to Europe, it is much less regulated because the wood that goes into the ski and therefore the end ski is not regulated. And so it's a very, very complex landscape to manage at that level. Are we going to see, twist your brain into knots, right? Are we going to see European brands start building their skis outside of Europe for the European market? Are we going to see U.S. brands build a European European engineered, a ski engineered for the European market requirements and a different one for North America and Asia? It's really hard to get our minds around because we haven't done this as an industry. But my forecast is that this is coming. And people argue with me. People hate when I say that. But I think it's reality. And if somebody wants to prove me wrong over time, I'd be happy. It'd be a lot easier on all of us. But I think we have to get ready for it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And again, goes without saying, hard goods, soft goods, accessories, the key product categories that, that are in our catalog here. And, anyway, these are going to be issues that we'll be tracking and following as well.
On that note, what are some of the things you have on the horizon with Snaplinc and SIA together?
Yeah, well, this is maybe this is the big unveil. So we've been talking about this a long time. We've mentioned that a few times during this podcast, and we've identified a few different areas and opportunities. And what really comes to play is that Ammi's a one-man band. With his team, we're a one-man band with our team here, and we can't do it alone. And we know the industry can't do it alone. So we need to make this easier. And so we are partnered to create a regulatory assessment tool that our members can use to help them understand what is at play for their company, their products, plural. And it's going to be a global platform. And so you can join and get into our subscription model and really put your best foot forward on what is going to be the issues affecting your business, and then how to right size that. Ammi is way more eloquent than I am in this space.
That was pretty good.
I'm the big idea guy, and Ammi is the bigger idea guy. But anyway, so Ammi, I'd love to hear your take on it too.
Yeah, no, that was pretty good. Yeah, so the big reveal, here it is. So we've been working on this tool for some time now. So this collaboration between SA and Snaplinc. And really what we're trying to do is take our consulting expertise and automate it, make it more scalable, more affordable for more brands, more teams within brands, more types of product categories, companies that make more types of product categories, and companies that do business in all manner of regions globally. So what this is really at its most basic level answers the number one question we get day in, day out at Snaplinc, which is, which regulations apply to me? Yes, you can tell us there are 135 plus regulations that you're tracking that could affect my brand, but how do I even begin to think about it? And really, that zero starting point is which regulations apply to me. So we do this work for clients all the time, day in, day out, and it's pretty expensive work. It's pretty high value work at the end. But the key point is that not a lot of companies are ready to take that step. Some companies actually think, if we knew what applied to us, we could solve it with in-house teams, and that's oftentimes true. Other companies think if we knew what applied to us and it was big enough, and we understood maybe what the penalty profile looked like, we might want to hire, right? We might want to create a new department, a new team around this. And other companies think, well, hey, I don't know exactly what I'm ready for. We might want to bring in consultancy, but really nobody has the framework to make those decisions. And none of those are inexpensive to the point we've made earlier. None of those are inexpensive decisions. So really what we're trying to do is say, which regulations apply to me? And the way we do that is we've actually taken our consulting expertise and automated it. When we go through this exercise with clients right now, we go through an intake set of questions. It's pretty elaborate. There's a lot of hand-holding. We work very closely. We do a very detailed deep dive within the company. And then what we do is we take that away. We go through our curated database of regulations, and we match the company attributes to those regulations. The next thing we do is we deliver a report to the client. We take that and we provide detailed, very, very detailed guidance on what is the regulation, what does it affect, what is the timeline, what are the penalties, what regions does it affect, and how, some very straightforward steps on how you should begin to comply. And that's regulation by regulation. And then we also try to summarize that, right? We know PFAS is a grouping of regulation globally. We know EPR, as we've covered a lot in this conversation, is a group of regulation globally. So we try to group accordingly for the client. So when they come out of one of the exercises they do with us, they have a really robust roadmap. They understand the implications of complying or not complying with these regulations. They understand what's required. And so we're mapping exactly that journey into a software product. User opens it up. They start with a series of intake questions. It outputs to them a very comprehensive, incredibly, I can't even emphasize how comprehensive it is, of a report that comes out the other side. And then we turn those into groupings. And all of this is customized to the brand based on those intake questions. And then all of it helps build a roadmap and a plan forward. At that point, companies then have the perspective and the foundation to be able to decide what to do next. And that could be, again, leverage in-house teams, great place to start if you have decently strong compliance teams. Bring in, start putting the job description together and build that team, or bring in consultancy like us. Whatever the case may be, it just opens people's eyes to what they have to do. And it also addresses the two questions we get pretty quickly thereafter, which is exactly what do I have to do and when do I have to do it? And our hope is to take that away from kind of a hands-on, high-touch consultancy engagement, which, by the way, we are still always happy to do, but really move that into a more accessible, scalable tool for brands.
So you're empowering them, which is great. And I think that's really the first step. Is sometimes you just want to be in the basement with a blanket over your head, but we can't do that anymore. And
No.
when does this become available? Because I think it's just an incredible opportunity for brands to maybe feel like they understand the landscape and be, strong enough to take that first step together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is going to be ready to go in the early part of 2026. So we're very close, super excited, ready to get this going. The nice thing is this is being built with deep engagement and partnership with SIA. So first and foremost, this is really going to support SIA members. We're not restricting it to that, of course. In the long term, this is going to support the broader outdoor industry and is built to support the broader consumer products industry. But first and foremost, this is designed to support the snow sports industry. So that's when you think about that, there aren't too many initiatives at that level. I mean, we work at Snaplinc with several associations across all kinds of industries, and none of them have taken the step forward that SIA has in engaging on a project like this. And I think really speaks to Nick and the rest of the team and the exceptional leadership, and speaks to the industry as a whole, right? I mean, this is family. We all know each other. We've all made turns together. This is what it's about, and exciting that we can really come together to support our industry in this way.
That's really cool.
Amazing.
Nick, what's your take on this? Like, this is something you guys have never done before.
No, this is first off the shelf. And, we started talking about this a year ago and change, Ammi and staff. And it was one of those aha moments when we're all sitting around, Ammi's dining room, in Seattle, and
literally
about this, and we're whiteboarding it, and we're throwing ideas back and forth. And, it was one of those, this is what the industry needs. This is the problem solved. This is why, again, whether it's Kaiser Schmarm or taking runs together, we're sitting around, we're having a face-to-face conversation and solution for the future. And that's where, Ammi mentioned this earlier in the podcast of every company's different. Every company has a different set of problems. If we can help them achieve those problems in a time effective, resource efficient manner, then we're doing our job. And, we are continuing to push the boundaries of our industry, but then potentially other industries. So we're really excited about this. It's been a labor of love. I mentioned in another podcast, I didn't think in a million years I'd be having this type of conversation or doing this type of work when I took this job at SIA. But I'm really proud of the work that we're doing. I'm really proud of staff. I'm really proud of the relationship with Ammi and Snaplinc and how we're able to create this. And again, it goes back to this is family and this is personal and this is what we do. And we do it because we love winter and we love the business. And, so I'm excited for the platform. And, it's like a kid, on Christmas Eve. I can't wait to get under the tree and see what this thing has to offer, take it for a test drive. And then I can't wait to get out there and share it with the industry. And so anyway, suffice to say, I'm super pumped. And, we're working as hard as we can and as quickly as we can, but we're also, we're nimble. So we've got the ability to make some changes, on the fly and change direction, degree or two left or right.
Yeah. And actually that's an amazingly good point. I mean, one of the things that is very, very challenging is there are so many changes across these regulations.
Right.
We hammered on clients, hey, the Oregon deadline, March 30 or 31st. And everybody was scrambling and scraping to get there as quickly as they could. And then Oregon gave it a 30-day extension. Right. And if you're not paying attention, you don't know that. And you're going to burn out your teams trying to hit that March 31st deadline. And the minute we got that 30-day extension, we told everybody, every one of our clients, hey, take a deep breath. We just bought 30 more days and we were almost ready anyway. Great. Let's now take another week or two, take a deep breath, go back through those results. Mm-hmm. So I think, Nick, that's a really amazing point that because we're so focused and because this partnership is so close, we are staying very, very nimble. So this tool will have constant updates. So it's not just a value in that you get a plan forward. It's a substantial value in that you get nonstop updates. You get clear insights to what's changed. We're working on exactly what that cadence looks like, whether that should be immediate or at some predetermined interval every week or so. But anybody who's part of this will get those updates. And the other thing that we're planning to push forward with this is actually a little bit of a countdown clock around those intake questions. So let's say you introduce a new product line. Let's say you expand to a new sales region. Let's say you grow your revenue over a certain threshold, right? As your business changes, your regulatory exposure changes. And so the idea is that none of this is a fixed point in time. So the combination of pushing brands to actually go through that series of intake questions probably once a quarter, and with the routine updates that we'll provide as part of this. This ensures not that you just have a moment in time where you understand what applies to you and what to do, but this ensures that if your team gets an extra 30 days when they desperately need it, you learn about that right away, right? That's a breaking news alert, right, for that whole team. And we're really excited that sort of longitudinally, as well as at a very, very kind of urgent breaking news level, this tool will be able to support the dynamism that we see across this regulatory landscape.
So I think that's probably been the hardest part for us as we're building and looking at the future. Is just how quickly this is changing, and that's Ammi just nailed it on the head. But just to drive it home one more time, this isn't a one and done. This isn't a wham bam, thank you, ma'am. This is what's happening for the foreseeable future in perpetuity. Yeah. So it's, we have to really think long and hard and plan for those changes to be current and get out in front of it.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Seriously, I'm really, really excited to see this, and listening to you two talk about it, it's like you just got a new pair of skis or something and it dumped.
Pretty close.
No.
More like a whole new quiver.
There you go. That's great. So January 2026 is when we're hoping to to see this live. And of course, we'll bring an unveiling to everybody here on the podcast, probably with a demo. And I can attest to Ammi and his great team. And also, obviously, SIA, you're going to have a lot of experts to help you as you're onboarding yourself into this tool. So it's one more, I think, great example of a membership perk that you get at SIA. And I think it's great that you're inviting in, really motivated, great minds and thinking with teams like Snaplinc to create these types of tools. Chapeau.
We're excited.
So going from this, I think we did a pretty good job keeping a pretty heavy subject pretty light. And I think that's because, in the spirit of this podcast, we make solutions actionable. This is a great example of that. But I just really want to end with like a positive note. I have a feeling like with this tool and with our attention in this conversation 2 years from now, the headlines are going to be a little bit different. And I think that our outdoor industries are going to be really leading the charge because, again, our consumers are incredibly invested in environmental stewardship and sustainability. And we have a whole, new generation. And I think all of us have kids in this age group who are very tuned in to how much they consume and what the brands are like that they buy from. And they can get closer to that than ever with media today. So I just feel like this is such an important topic and something that we're going to be really weaving into our narrative throughout the podcast this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
So with that, I think we're in a good spot to wrap up. And I just really, again, want to thank you so much, Ammi, for your partnership with SIA and for joining us here today. You do so many great webinars for the membership too, and you have great resources on your own website. So again, all of that will be in the show notes at snowsports.org. Ammi, what's the best email that everybody can find you at? Website. You don't have to give your email.
So Snaplinc Consulting. So if you type SNAPLINC into Google, we come up first. And yeah, we have, we have only barely grazed the surface of the regulatory landscape. So poke around. We do have a lot of sort of executive summary bulletins, and that ranges from EPR, which we talked about, PFAS, which we talked about, all the way to some of the California regulations for companies over $500 million, which we're supporting a few brands on. We have some downloads there, executive summaries as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate both of your time, and we'll see you next time on the Inside Line podcast.